You don't belong in this section. I don't care what your reservation says." The woman at the front desk didn't even look up when she said it. She just kept typing, fingers moving across the keyboard like the person standing in front of her was an inconvenience, a smudge on an otherwise clean afternoon. Loretta Haines set her bag down on the marble counter, slowly, not because she was flustered, because she had learned over 58 years on this earth that the people who moved slowly in moments like this were the ones who controlled them. "I have a confirmed reservation," Loretta said. "Penthouse suite, 3 nights." The desk clerk, her name tag read, Vivian, finally looked up. And something shifted behind her eyes. Not apology, not recognition. Something closer to recalculation, the way people look when they've already decided who you are and are annoyed that reality isn't cooperating. "We have a situation with that room," Vivian said. "A prior guest extended their stay. We can offer you something on the 4th floor." "The 4th floor. It's a very comfortable room." Loretta looked at her for a long moment. The Caldwell Grand Hotel rose 42 stories above downtown Atlanta. Its lobby had a chandelier the size of a small house. Its penthouse suite rented for $4,800 a night and came with a private butler, a wraparound terrace, and a view of the city that people described in the kind of language usually reserved for religious experiences. The 4th floor had a view of the parking garage. "I'd like to speak with the manager," Loretta said. Vivian picked up a phone, pressed a button, waited. The man, who appeared from a side hallway, was perhaps 35, in a suit that fit him well, and an expression that suggested he had been interrupted from something important. His name tag said, Derek Moss, Guest Relations Director. "Is there a problem?" he asked, directing the question somewhere between Loretta and the middle distance. "Your colleague has informed me that my penthouse reservation is being reassigned to the 4th floor," Loretta said. "I'd like to understand why." Derek Moss glanced at the screen, then at Loretta, then back at the screen. He did the math the same way Vivian had. He looked at the woman in front of him, natural hair going silver at the temples, reading glasses on a chain around her neck, wearing a navy blazer over a simple white blouse, no visible jewelry except small gold earrings. And he made a decision about who she was. People always made that decision. They were almost never right. "Mrs. is a..." He glanced at the screen again. "Haines, I apologize for the inconvenience. The prior guest is a long-standing platinum member of our loyalty program, and given the circumstances, we prioritized." "I'm also a platinum member," Loretta said. A pause. "Yes," Derek said. "Of course. However, in situations like this, we do have to make judgment calls based on the full picture." Loretta Haines had been making judgment calls for 30 years. She had made them in boardrooms and courtrooms and conference rooms at 6 in the morning when everyone else was still asleep. She had made them when her company had 12 employees, and when it had 4,000. She had made them on phone calls where 9 figures were on the table and the other party thought she didn't know the number she was looking at. She made one now. "I'll take the room for tonight," she said. "Thank you." Derek Moss blinked. He had been prepared for a scene. He did not get one. Loretta picked up her bag, accepted the keycard from a bewildered Vivian, and walked toward the elevator with the unhurried stride of a woman who had nowhere to be and everywhere to go. She did not tell them who she was. She rarely did in moments like this. There was a reason for that. The Caldwell Grand Hotel had been in financial trouble for 14 months before anyone outside the company's inner circle knew about it. Loretta knew. She had known for almost a year, because one of the things you learn when you've spent 3 decades in commercial real estate and hospitality investment is how to read a building the way other people read faces. You walk into a lobby, and you notice that the flower arrangements are a week past their prime. You notice that 2 of the elevator panels have smudges that weren't cleaned between guests. You notice that the bar stools at the mezzanine lounge are slightly misaligned, which means either the staff is undertrained or understaffed, and either way the answer is the same. You notice that the front desk clerk is wearing shoes that have been resold twice, which tells you the staff hasn't had a raise in a while, which tells you something about where the revenue is going. Loretta noticed all of it. She was not at the Caldwell Grand Hotel as a guest. Well, she was a guest. She was also the lead partner in a consortium that had been quietly evaluating the property for acquisition for the better part of 6 months. The visit was what her team called a soft audit. No cameras, no clipboards, no advance notice to hotel management, just a woman with reading glasses and a confirmed reservation, seeing how the place treated a stranger. She had done this with 11 hotels over the course of her career. She had bought 7 of them. On the 4th floor, the room was fine. Clean, well-appointed, with a window that looked out at exactly the angle she'd expected. Concrete and cars, with a sliver of skyline visible if you pressed your face to the glass. She set her bag on the luggage rack and sat on the edge of the bed and took out her phone and opened the notes app she used for audits. Front desk, protocol failure, manager, judgment lapse, room reassignment, no offer of compensation, no apology beyond pro forma. She thought for a moment, then added, Vivian didn't look up. That one mattered. It mattered more than people might think. A hotel is only as good as the moment between a guest walking through the door and a staff member looking up from whatever they're doing. That moment, that 1-second decision to make another human being feel seen, is the entire business. Everything else is plumbing. She had a dinner meeting at 7 with her attorney, a man named Franklin who had been working with her for 12 years and who communicated almost entirely in raised eyebrows and understatement. She showered, changed into a black dress that had cost her $1,200 and looked like it had cost $200 because that was the kind of thing she liked, and went downstairs. The restaurant was beautiful. She would give them that. The lighting was warm and considered, the menu was thoughtful. The sommelier moved through the room with the quiet authority of someone who genuinely loved what they did. She ordered the halibut. She made notes in her phone while she waited for Franklin. He arrived exactly on time, sat down, looked at her once, and said, "How bad?" "Bad enough," she said. Franklin raised an eyebrow, which in his vocabulary meant, "Tell me more." "Desk clerk didn't look up when I walked in," Loretta said. "Manager assumed the system had already made a decision for him, gave my penthouse to someone else. Based on what he saw when he looked at me." Franklin's expression didn't change. He had heard this before. He had heard it in many variations, across many years, across many hotels and office buildings and country clubs and investment meetings, where someone had looked at Loretta Haines and processed her as the wrong kind of person in the right kind of room. He had watched her respond to every single one of those moments with the same patience, the same stillness, and then later, sometimes much later, with the kind of precision that people in those rooms had not anticipated. "The property itself?" he asked. "Strong bones," she said. "Terrible management culture, which means it's priced wrong for what it could be." Franklin reached for the breadbasket. "And you want to fix that?" "I want to own it," Loretta said, "and then fix it." What happened the next morning was not something Loretta planned. She had planned, by that point in her life, to stop putting herself in positions where scenes became necessary. She had done enough scene-making in her 40s. In her 50s, she had refined her approach. Observe, document, decide, act. No confrontations, no raised voices. No moments that other people could reframe later as her being difficult. But sometimes the scene comes to you. She was in the elevator at 8:45 in the morning, heading down from the 4th floor with her laptop bag and her coffee from the in-room maker, which had been fine but not exceptional, when the elevator stopped at the 7th floor and Derek Moss got in. He was with a woman Loretta didn't recognize, a guest from the look of her. White, perhaps 50, wearing the kind of casual expensive that people wear when they want you to know they don't need to try. Derek Moss was laughing at something the woman had said. He was very engaged. He was extremely attentive. He was touching the elevator button with the practiced grace of a man who had been trained in the art of making certain guests feel like the floor was built for them specifically. He did not look at Loretta. She was standing 3 feet from him. She was the only other person in the elevator. He did not look at her. The woman he was with did look at her, briefly, with the vague incuriosity of someone who has looked at other people their whole life and rarely found anything interesting. Then she looked back at Derek Moss and resumed her conversation about the rooftop terrace and whether it was available for a private event on Saturday. Absolutely, Derek said. Whatever you need, we'll make it perfect. Loretta watched the numbers count down. Lobby. The doors opened. Derek Moss and his companion stepped out. Loretta followed. She crossed the lobby. Vivian was at the front desk, same clerk, different morning, and looked up this time, probably because she recognized Loretta and had enough sense to be slightly uncomfortable. Loretta walked past her without stopping. She walked to the lobby seating area, sat in one of the wing chairs near the window, opened her laptop, and called Raymond. Raymond was her director of acquisitions. He was 29 years old and had the unsettling quality of being both relentlessly cheerful and extremely good at his job, which Loretta had decided to treat as a gift rather than a contradiction. "Good morning," he said. "Move the timeline up," Loretta said. A pause. "How far up?" "I want the offer submitted by end of week." Another pause, shorter this time because Raymond had learned to do his recalibrating quickly. "Okay. I'll need the audit summary. You'll have it by noon." She closed the call, sat with her coffee, looked out at the Atlanta morning, at the people moving through the lobby behind her reflection in the glass, at the chandelier that nobody was looking at because most people stopped noticing beautiful things after a while. Derek Moss crossed her field of vision, still talking to the woman from the elevator, steering her gently toward the concierge desk, with his hand slightly raised, not quite touching her back, the professional hover of someone who understands the choreography of service. He was good at his job in certain ways. He understood that some guests needed to feel escorted. He understood warmth when he recognized the person who deserved it. That was the problem. The deserves part. She finished the audit summary at 11:45, sent it to Raymond, and checked out. Vivian processed the checkout. She was more careful this time, polite in the way people are when they've had time to wonder if they made an error. Loretta accepted the receipt, said thank you, and meant it, because Vivian was working a job that paid her probably $15 an hour and living in a city where that amount of money required a kind of daily creativity that Loretta respected, even when she couldn't approve of how it expressed itself. "Have a good day," Vivian said. "You too," Loretta said. And that was that. The offer was submitted on Thursday. The Caldwell Grand's ownership group, a holding company based in Phoenix that had inherited the property through a merger 3 years ago and had been quietly panicking about it ever since, responded within 18 hours, faster than expected, which told Loretta what she already suspected. They wanted out. There were 2 weeks of back and forth, the kind of careful financial negotiation that looks like a chess game to outsiders and feels like a chess game to everyone involved, including the pawns. Loretta did not attend these meetings in person. She let Franklin and Raymond handle the rooms while she worked from her home office in Buckhead, where the windows overlooked a garden that she had planted herself over a period of 8 years, one section at a time, starting with the magnolias along the back fence and ending, last spring, with a rose bed along the north wall that had taken 2 failed attempts before it held. She was patient in gardens the same way she was patient in business. You don't rush the roots. The deal closed on a Tuesday, $61 million, a negotiated management transition period of 90 days, a clause in the contract that gave Loretta's company full authority over staffing decisions at the general manager level and above, effective immediately upon closing. She called Raymond. "We're in," she said. "Yes," he said, in the voice of someone who had clearly been waiting by the phone. "Are we celebrating?" "We're working," she said. "Get me a staff review for all director-level positions. I want it by Friday." "On it." A pause. "Are you going back to the hotel?" Loretta thought about the elevator. She thought about Derek Moss and his carefully angled attention. She thought about Vivian's shoes and the flower arrangements and the smudged elevator panels and the 4th-floor window with the sliver of skyline. "Yes," she said, "but not yet." The 90-day transition period is the part of an acquisition that most people don't see, which is a shame because it's where everything actually happens. It's where you find out if the bones are as good as you thought, or if what you mistook for bones was actually the building holding its breath. The Caldwell Grand's bones were good. The culture was exactly as sick as she diagnosed. The staff reviews told a story she had seen before in various forms, a small cluster of senior employees who had learned that the way to keep their positions was to learn very quickly which guests required investment and which ones could be processed efficiently and moved along. It was not malice exactly. Malice is cleaner than this. This was something more mundane and more damaging, a set of habits that had calcified into policy, invisible and unwritten, passed from manager to new hire through 100 small moments of modeling. Watch how Derek handles the penthouse guests. Watch how he handles everyone else. Loretta had seen it in hospitals and law firms and restaurants and car dealerships. She had seen it in the way rooms got quiet when she walked in and got loud again when she walked out. She had spent her career building companies that were, in some fundamental sense, arguments against this way of operating. Not because she was naive about human nature, but because she had found over and over that it was also bad for business. The guest who gets the 4th floor when they book the penthouse doesn't always tell you about it. Sometimes they just don't come back. Sometimes they tell 20 people. Sometimes they buy your hotel. She met with Derek Moss in the 3rd week of the transition. He had been told, at that point, that the property had changed hands, that a new ownership group was conducting a review, and that someone from the corporate team would be scheduling individual meetings with director-level staff. He had not been told who owned the property. He came into the conference room, the same room where, 45 days earlier, he had been holding his planning meetings for the weekend rooftop events, and shook hands with the woman across the table and sat down. It took him perhaps 4 seconds. She watched it happen. The scan. The attempt at retrieval. The thing in the eyes when the file finally opened. She had seen that look many times. It was not a comfortable thing to watch, and she had never quite gotten used to it. The particular expression of a person discovering that the story they told themselves about a situation was the wrong story. "Ms. Haines," he said. "Mr. Moss," she said. He straightened slightly. "I didn't realize." "No," she said. "You didn't." She let that sit for a moment. Not cruelly, but fully. "I'm going to be direct with you," she said, "because I think directness is more respectful than the alternative. I stayed at this property 6 weeks ago. I had a confirmed penthouse reservation that was reassigned without my consent or adequate explanation. I observed, during my time here, patterns of guest interaction that I found inconsistent with the standards this property is capable of meeting." Derek Moss had gone very still. "I want to be clear about something," Loretta continued. "I'm not here to humiliate anyone. That's not how I run companies. What I am going to do is rebuild the service culture of this hotel from the ground up, starting with leadership, because that's where culture actually lives. And I need to know from the people in your position whether they're able to grow into something different than what's been here." She paused. "So that's my question for you," she said. "Not about the reservation, about the question underneath it." Derek Moss looked at his hands. He was quiet for a long time. Long enough that it meant something. "I think," he said slowly, "I made assumptions I shouldn't have made." "Yes," Loretta said. "I don't know that I have a good explanation." "I'm not asking for an explanation," she said. "I'm asking if you understand what the problem was." He was quiet again. "And then she got off a car on the tarmac," he said softly, "which was the wrong hotel, the wrong story, but the right instinct." He caught himself. "I mean, she walked in. She walked. And she was, I looked at her and He stopped, started again. "I made a decision before I had the information." "Yes," Loretta said again. "That's the job," he said, "and the worst way to decide instantly what a person needs. And he exhaled. "I wasn't deciding what she needed. I was deciding who she was." Loretta looked at him for a moment. "That's a remarkably honest answer," she said. "I've had 6 weeks to think about it," he said. "Ever since. I mean, I didn't know it was you specifically, but I knew after you left that something had gone wrong. Vivian mentioned it. I thought about it more than I should have." "Good," Loretta said. "That's actually good." She restructured the leadership team. Some positions changed hands. Derek Moss was not among them, which surprised people, including Derek Moss. She kept him, reassigned him to lead the training program she built from scratch over the following 4 months. A program that started on its very first day with a question she wrote on a whiteboard in the conference room. What do you decide about a person before you know them? She did not put her name on the question. She didn't need to. The Caldwell Grand reopened under its new management structure on a Thursday morning in February. The lobby had the same chandelier. The restaurant had the same warm lighting. The sommelier was the same sommelier who had been one of the best things about the place and whom Loretta had personally called to make sure he was staying. The flowers were fresh. The elevator panels were clean. Loretta walked through the lobby on opening morning at 7:45 before the staff knew she was coming, in the same navy blazer and reading glasses, carrying the same bag. A young woman at the front desk looked up before Loretta had taken 3 steps inside. "Good morning," the woman said. "Welcome to the Caldwell." She meant it. Loretta could tell. After 58 years, she could always tell. "Good morning," Loretta said, and smiled and kept walking. Some people spend their whole careers waiting to be recognized as what they are. Loretta Haines had learned, a long time ago, to build the rooms where recognition wasn't something you had to wait for, where it was simply what happened when someone walked through the door. That was the work. That was always the work. I keep thinking about the moment Derek Moss walked into that conference room and it took him 4 seconds to recognize the woman sitting across the table. 4 seconds. That's not a long time in most situations. In that one, it was everything. What strikes me most about Loretta's story isn't the acquisition. It isn't the $61 million or the contract or the restructured leadership team. It's the fact that she didn't say a word in that elevator. She watched Derek steer another guest toward the concierge with his hand slightly raised, all warmth and attention, and she didn't announce herself. She didn't demand to be seen. She just watched, noted it, and went back to her laptop and called Raymond and said, "Move the timeline up." That's a kind of strength I think we underestimate because it doesn't look like strength from the outside. It looks like patience. It looks like doing nothing. But there's a discipline in that stillness that most people never develop, because most of us, when we feel overlooked, when someone has decided who we are before we've had a chance to be it, we want to correct the record immediately. We want them to know. And I understand that impulse. I've felt it. But Loretta had learned something that took her decades to fully trust, that the right response to being misjudged isn't always to correct the person doing the judging. Sometimes it's to go back to your room, open your laptop, and keep building the thing you were already building. That's what I mean when I think about integrity as a practice rather than a declaration. Derek didn't see Loretta because he wasn't looking for her. He was looking for a version of success that had a particular shape, a particular presentation, a particular set of signals he'd been trained to recognize. And she didn't have those signals, not because she lacked the substance, but because she'd never needed the signals. She knew what she was worth. That knowledge had a different kind of weight than a luxury watch or a designer bag. It was the weight of someone who has done the work for long enough that they no longer need the room to confirm it. And then there's the part that I find genuinely hard to do, which is what she did with Derek afterward. She kept him. She sat across from him in that conference room, watched the recognition move across his face, and chose to ask him whether he understood the problem rather than make him an example of it. That required something, not forgiveness exactly, but a kind of clear-eyed practicality about human beings. He had made a mistake. He knew he had made it. He had spent 6 weeks thinking about it. She decided that was worth something. I don't think that choice was easy. I think it cost her something to make it, but I also think it was the smarter move, not just the more generous one. The question she put on that whiteboard, what do you decide about a person before you know them? That's not a question you can answer once and move on. It's a question you have to keep asking yourself, every day, every lobby, every elevator. What we decide before we know is where everything starts, and where everything, eventually, lands.